Let's not allow Daddy Lumba's mistakes to overshadow his legendary achievements. This man went from an ambitious boy who couldn't afford proper recording equipment to becoming the most decorated highlife musician in Ghanaian history. He faced rejection from record labels, battled poverty so severe he had to borrow money to eat, survived a near-fatal car accident that almost ended his career, was betrayed by close friends in the music industry, and even saw his music banned from national radio at the height of his fame. Yet through it all, he rose to become a legend who has released over 30 albums, won countless awards, mentored generations of artists, and created a sound that defined Ghanaian music for over 3 decades. His songs became the soundtrack to weddings, funerals, celebrations, and heartbreaks across West Africa and beyond. Today, I'm going to walk you through the incredible highlights of Daddy Lumba's life, and at each point, I'll extract a powerful lesson you can apply immediately to transform your own journey. Whether you're an artist, entrepreneur, or someone simply trying to make your mark on the world. By the end of this video, you'll understand that your current circumstances don't define your future. Your resilience, creativity, and willingness to evolve do. So let's begin. Lesson 1. Start where you are with what you have. In the early 1980s, Charles Kwadwo Fosu was living in Nsuta Mampong, a small town in Ghana's Ashanti region, with dreams bigger than his surroundings could contain. He loved music desperately, but poverty was his constant companion. He didn't have a guitar, couldn't afford studio time, and had no connections in the music industry, while other aspiring musicians in Accra and Kumasi were networking with producers and performing in clubs. Charles was in a rural town with nothing but raw talent and an unshakable belief that music was his destiny. His family struggled financially, and there were days when he had to choose between buying food and pursuing his musical dreams. But Charles refused to wait for perfect conditions. He started performing at local events, funerals, and small gatherings, anywhere people would listen. He joined a band called the Lumba Brothers, where he honed his skills singing and playing instruments with whatever equipment they could borrow or rent. The pay was minimal, sometimes just enough for a meal, but he treated every performance like it was at the National Theatre. He studied the greats, E.T. Mensah, Nana Ampadu, learning the techniques, understanding the storytelling, absorbing everything he could about high life, music, soul, and structure. When he finally scraped together enough money to record his first songs in the mid-1980s, the quality was poor by industry standards. The production was rough, but the emotion was undeniable. Those early recordings, made in basic studios with limited resources, caught the attention of people who recognized that talent doesn't require permission or perfect conditions to shine. In 1986, Daddy Lumba traveled to Germany, where he worked odd jobs while trying to break into the European music scene. He washed dishes, worked in factories, did whatever it took to survive while pursuing music on the side. In Germany, he met Ernest Nana Acheampong, and together they formed a musical partnership that would change Ghanaian music forever. They recorded their breakthrough album, We Will Succeed on This Journey, in 1989, using studios and equipment they accessed through sheer persistence and creative financing. The album was recorded far from home in a foreign country with limited resources, but it became a massive hit in Ghana, establishing Daddy Lumba as a force to be reckoned with. Now, what can we learn from this? You don't need perfect conditions to start building your dream. You need to maximize whatever is in your hand right now. My good friend, listen carefully. The biggest lie we tell ourselves is, I'll start when I have the right equipment, the right connections, the right amount of money, the right circumstances. But Daddy Lumba's story destroys that excuse. He started in a small town with no studio, no professional equipment, no industry connections, and still found ways to perform, learn, and grow. He understood something profound. Starting imperfectly is infinitely better than waiting perfectly. Your current limitations are not roadblocks, they're your training ground. Every small performance, every rough recording, every humble beginning is teaching you skills and building resilience you'll need when bigger opportunities come. So imagine you have a business idea but don't have capital for a fancy office or high-end equipment. Instead of waiting until you have everything perfect, the way most people do, paralyzed by the gap between their vision and their current reality, rather start with what you have right now. Run your business from your bedroom. Use free software, leverage social media for marketing, offer your services to your first client, even if you have to do it at a discount to build your portfolio. And it will teach you invaluable lessons about your customer, your market, and your own capabilities. Lessons you could never learn by waiting. You'd be building momentum, establishing credibility, and creating a foundation that perfect planning alone could never provide. As business philosopher Jim Rohn once said, "Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for fewer problems, wish for more skills. Don't wish for less challenge, wish for more wisdom." What Rohn understood and what Daddy Lumba demonstrated is that your growth doesn't come from perfect conditions, but from wrestling with imperfect ones. When you start where you are with what you have, you develop resourcefulness, creativity, and resilience that people who wait for perfect conditions will never possess. Daddy Lumba's willingness to perform at funerals, work in German factories, and record in basic studios build the character and skills that later enabled him to thrive when better opportunities arrived. The conditions didn't make him great. His response to difficult conditions did. Lesson 2. Partnership can multiply your impact, but know when to walk alone. When Daddy Lumba met Ernest Nana Achiampong in Germany in the late 1980s, it seemed like destiny. Both were Ghanaian musicians trying to make it abroad. Both understood high-life music soul, and both had complementary skills and styles. They decided to collaborate, forming the duo Lumba Brothers, and the chemistry was immediate and explosive. Their 1989 album became a phenomenon in Ghana, with hit songs and other tracks that dominated airwaves and cassette players across West Africa. The partnership worked beautifully. Achiampong's vocals blended perfectly with Lumba's. Their songwriting complemented each other, and together they created a sound that felt fresh yet authentically Ghanaian. But after the massive success of their collaboration, tensions began to emerge. Creative differences surfaced about musical direction. Financial disagreements arose about how to split earnings, and ego clashes became inevitable as both artists' individual profiles grew. By 1990, after releasing a few more collaborative projects, the partnership dissolved. It was messy, public, and painful. Fans took sides, industry observers speculated about what went wrong, and there were moments of bitterness between the two artists. Daddy Lumba found himself at a crossroads. Should he try to hold onto the partnership that had brought him breakthrough success, or should he venture out as a solo artist, risking everything on his individual ability to sustain the momentum? He chose to go solo, and that decision changed everything. In 1991, Daddy Lumba released his first solo album, Eqay. I've experienced it, and it was not just successful, it was revolutionary. The album showcased his unique voice, his storytelling ability, his range as a composer and producer. Songs became instant classics, establishing him not as half of a duo but as a complete artist in his own right. Over the next 3 decades, he would release over 30 albums, each reinforcing his status as Ghana's Highlife king. He proved that while partnership had given him a platform, his individual talent was what sustained his career. Meanwhile, Achiampong also pursued a solo career with some success. showing that both artists had needed to find their own path. Now, what can we learn from this? Collaboration can accelerate your growth, but never let partnership dependency prevent you from developing your individual strength. My good friend, partnerships are powerful. They combine resources, multiply creativity, and share risks. Daddy Lumba's collaboration gave him the breakthrough he needed, the platform that introduced him to millions of fans. But he also understood something critical. A partnership should be a chapter in your story, not the entire book. When creative visions diverge, when financial arrangements become contentious, when one person's growth requires a different path, you must have the courage to walk alone. The key is to enter partnerships while continuously developing your individual capabilities. So if the partnership ends, you're not left helpless. So if you're in a business partnership that's becoming more burden than blessing, maybe your partner's vision no longer aligns with yours, or financial disagreements are creating constant tension, or you've simply outgrown the original arrangement, instead of clinging to it out of fear or nostalgia, the way many people do, afraid they can't succeed alone. Rather, have honest conversations about potentially going separate ways. Make sure you've developed your individual skills and capabilities throughout the partnership so you're not dependent, and structure an exit that's respectful and fair to both parties. And it would free both of you to pursue the paths you're truly meant to walk, often leading to greater success for both parties than staying in a deteriorating partnership ever could. As author Mandy Hale wisely stated, growth is painful, change is painful, but nothing is as painful as staying stuck somewhere you don't belong. What Hale captured and what Daddy Lumba demonstrated is that sometimes the hardest decision is the necessary one. Staying in the Lumba Brothers duo might have been the comfortable choice, the safe choice, but it would have limited both artists' growth. By having the courage to dissolve the partnership and pursue his solo vision, Daddy Lumba discovered his full potential and created a legacy that a duo format could never have contained. The partnership served its purpose by giving him a platform, but his individual talent and willingness to stand alone built his empire. Know when to collaborate and when to walk alone. Lesson 3. Evolution is not betrayal. Adapt or become irrelevant. By the mid-1990s, Daddy Lumba had established himself as Ghana's premier highlife artist. His albums consistently topped charts, his concerts sold out, and his influence was undeniable. But the music landscape was changing dramatically. Hip life, a fusion of hip life, rap, and high life, was emerging as the sound of young Ghana. Artists like Reggie Rockstone were pioneering this new genre, and younger audiences were gravitating toward its modern urban energy. Traditional high life, the genre that Daddy Lumba had mastered and perfected, was suddenly being labeled as old people's music by trend-conscious youth. Industry observers predicted that Daddy Lumba's time was over, that he was too identified with traditional high life to survive the hip life revolution, that he would fade into irrelevance like many legends before him who couldn't adapt to changing times. But Daddy Lumba refused to become a relic. Instead of rigidly defending traditional high life's purity or dismissing hip life as a passing fad, he studied it, understood its appeal, and began incorporating its elements into his music. In 1999, he released Abenwo Ha, which seamlessly blended high life's melodic richness with contemporary production techniques and hip life influenced rhythms. He featured up-and-coming hip life artists on his tracks, giving them credibility while refreshing his own sound. He collaborated with younger producers who understood modern recording technology and contemporary tastes, and later works showed an artist who was evolving without losing his identity. His voice was still unmistakably Daddy Lumba. His storytelling still carried high life soul, but but the production, arrangements, and rhythmic elements reflected current trends. This evolution kept him relevant across multiple generations. While other highlife legends from his era struggled to maintain their audiences, Daddy Lumba's willingness to adapt allowed him to command multi-generational crowds at his concerts. Grandparents who loved his early traditional work, middle-aged fans who grew up with his 90s hits, and young people who appreciated his contemporary sound. He proved that evolution doesn't mean abandoning your core identity. It means expressing that identity through whatever forms resonate with your current audience. By 2025, he had been a relevant force in Ghanaian music for over 35 years, a longevity that rigid traditionalists could never achieve. Now, what can we learn from this? Staying true to your core doesn't mean refusing to evolve. It means expressing your essence through whatever forms your current audience can receive. My good friend, one of the most dangerous traps in any field is becoming so attached to your methods that you lose sight of your mission. Daddy Lumba's mission was never to play traditional highlife exactly as the pioneers did. His mission was to tell Ghanaian stories, express Ghanaian emotions, and create music that touched Ghanaian hearts. When the vehicle that worked in the 1980s stopped working in the 2000s, he changed the vehicle but kept the cargo. Many artists, entrepreneurs, and professionals make the mistake of conflating their methods with their mission, defending outdated approaches as authenticity when they're actually just resisting necessary change. Evolution is not betrayal of your principles, it's the fulfillment of them in new contexts. So imagine you're running a business that has always succeeded using traditional marketing methods, print ads, radio spots, physical storefronts, but now your target customers are spending most of their time online, engaging with brands through social media, making purchases through e-commerce platforms. Instead of stubbornly insisting that the old ways worked fine and watching your business slowly die, the way many established businesses do when faced with digital transformation. Rather, keep your core values and mission but completely transform your methods. Move your marketing budget to digital channels, build a strong social media presence, develop an e-commerce platform, learn about SEO and content marketing, hire young people who understand these spaces, and it would allow you to reach your customers where they actually are, express your brand's essence through contemporary channels, and maintain relevance in a changed landscape, all without compromising the core values that made your business great in the first place. As management guru Peter Drucker famously observed, the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence itself, but to act with yesterday's logic. What Drucker understood and what Daddy Lumba demonstrated is that yesterday's logic becomes today's liability when the world has changed. The logic that made Daddy Lumba successful in the 1980s would have destroyed his career in the 2000s if he had insisted on rigidly applying it. His genius was recognizing which elements were essential: his storytelling, his vocal style, his understanding of Ghanaian emotions, and which elements were simply period-specific methods that needed updating: production techniques, rhythmic patterns, collaboration strategies. Adapt your methods without losing your mission, and you'll remain relevant across eras. Lesson 4. Your personal life will fuel or starve your public work. Daddy Lumba faced one of the darkest periods of his life. His mother, Comfort, passed away, the woman who had supported his musical dreams even when they seemed impossible, who had believed in him when he was just a poor boy from Nsuta Mampong with big dreams. Her death devastated him emotionally. Around the same time, his marriage was going through serious difficulties, with rumors of separation circulating in Ghanaian media. Then came the physical crisis. Daddy Lumba was involved in a serious car accident that left him hospitalized with significant injuries. For weeks, it was unclear whether he would recover fully, whether he would be able to perform again, whether his career might be over. The convergence of these crises, grief, marital struggles, and physical trauma could have ended a lesser artist. Industry observers wondered whether Daddy Lumba had reached the end of his journey. He disappeared from public view for months during his recovery, and the silence was deafening. But what happened during that dark period was remarkable. Rather than letting these personal tragedies destroy him, Daddy Lumba processed them through his music. The pain became raw material for songwriting. The grief informed his vocal performances with even deeper emotion. The near-death experience gave him renewed appreciation for his gift. When he returned to the studio, the music that emerged was some of his most powerful and authentic work. Albums released in the years following his recovery and later projects carried a depth and vulnerability that resonated with fans who had also faced loss, heartbreak, and life-threatening challenges. His performances gained a new intensity. Audiences could hear that he was singing not just as an entertainer, but as someone who had walked through fire and come out stronger. He openly discussed his mother's death in interviews, sharing how her memory inspired him to keep creating. He addressed his personal struggles with a vulnerability that was rare for male African artists of his generation. Rather than separating his personal pain from his professional work, he integrated them, making his music more human, more relatable, more powerful. Now, what can we learn from this? Your personal struggles are not interruptions to your work. They are raw materials that, when properly processed, can deepen and authenticate your work. My good friend, we live in a culture that tells us to compartmentalize, to keep our personal lives separate from our professional work, to present a polished public image that reveals no cracks or vulnerabilities. But Daddy Lumba understood something profound. The struggles that seem like they will destroy your work can actually become the source of your most impactful work if you're brave enough to process them honestly. Your pain, when transformed through your craft, becomes connection. Your vulnerability, when channeled into your work, becomes relatability. Your darkest moments, when mined for the lessons and emotions, become the raw materials of your greatest contributions. So if you're going through a personal crisis, maybe you're dealing with grief from losing a loved one, or your marriage is falling apart, or you're facing a health scare that makes you question everything instead of trying to ignore it and push through as if nothing is happening, the way most people do, compartmentalizing until they break down completely. Rather, give yourself permission to feel it fully, to process it honestly, and then to channel those emotions into your work in appropriate ways. If you're a writer, write about it. If you're a business leader, let it inform how you treat employees going through similar struggles. If you're a teacher, use your experience to connect with students facing difficulties, and it will transform your pain from something that merely happens to you into something that deepens your work, authenticates your message, and connects you with others who need to know they're not alone in their struggles. As author Brené Brown powerfully articulated, vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage. What Brown captured and what Daddy Lumba embodied is that our culture misunderstands vulnerability as weakness when it's actually a profound form of strength. When Daddy Lumba returned to music after his mother's death, his accident, and his marital struggles, he could have pretended everything was fine, maintaining the impenetrable celebrity image. Instead, he allowed his pain to infuse his music with a depth that his earlier, more carefree work couldn't touch. That vulnerability didn't make him weak. It made him powerful, authentic, and deeply human. Process your pain. Don't just endure it. Lesson 5. Legacy is built by lifting others, not just climbing yourself. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, as Daddy Lumba cemented his position as Ghana's Highlife king, he could have adopted the competitive zero-sum mentality that many successful artists embrace. Protect your position. View emerging artists as threats, hoard opportunities, and maintain your dominance by keeping others down. Many legends in African music history have taken this approach, using their influence to block upcoming artists they perceived as competition, refusing to collaborate with younger talents, and creating hostile environments for anyone who might challenge their supremacy. This gatekeeping mentality has stunted many African music scenes and created bitter rivalries that diminished entire genres. But Daddy Lumba chose a different path. He became known throughout the Ghanaian music industry as an artist who actively mentored and promoted younger talents. He featured upcoming artists on his albums, giving them exposure to his massive fan base. Artists like Ofori and Ponsa, who would go on to become stars in their own right, credit Daddy Lumba with crucial early support that launched their careers. When he toured, he would bring along younger acts, giving them stage time before his massive audiences. He shared industry knowledge freely, how to deal with producers, how to structure contracts, how to build a lasting career rather than chasing one-hit success. In interviews and private conversations, he emphasized that Ghanaian music strength came from abundance, not scarcity. The more great artists the industry produced, the bigger the entire ecosystem would become. This generosity created a legacy that extended beyond his own music. Artists across generations spoke respectfully about Daddy Lumba, not just as a great musician, but as someone who opened doors for others. When he celebrated his 60th birthday in 2024, the tributes that poured in from across the Ghanaian music industry weren't just about his hits. They were about his character, his willingness to lift others, his understanding that greatness is measured not just by what you achieve, but by what you enable others to achieve. Younger artists like Kwame Eugene, Kidi, and others from the current generation have cited Daddy Lumba as an inspiration and acknowledged how his mentorship culture created space for them to thrive. Now, what can we learn from this? True legacy is not measured by how high you climb alone, but by how many people you bring with you on the journey. My good friend, there's a fundamental choice every successful person faces. Do you view your field as having limited resources where others' success threatens yours? Or do you see it as an expanding ecosystem where more success creates more opportunities for everyone? Daddy Lumba chose abundance over scarcity, and that choice transformed him from merely a successful artist into a beloved legend. When you lift others, you're not diminishing your own light, you're multiplying it to everyone you touch. The most enduring legacies are never solo achievements. They are ecosystems of influence where your success ripples through generations of people you mentored, supported, and believed in. So imagine you've reached a senior position in your industry. Maybe you're a successful entrepreneur or a department head or an established professional with influence. You start noticing talented young people entering your field who, with some guidance and opportunity, could become excellent. Instead of viewing them as threats who might one day take your position, the way many insecure leaders do, hoarding knowledge and blocking opportunities. Rather, actively mentor them. Make introductions that could help their careers. Share the hard-won lessons you've learned. Create opportunities for them to showcase their talents and celebrate their victories as if they were your own. And it would build a network of people who credit you with their success. Multiply your impact far beyond what you could achieve individually and create a legacy that transcends your personal accomplishments, because greatness shared becomes immortal. As the African proverb wisely teaches, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. What this ancient wisdom captures and what Daddy Lumba exemplified is that solitary success has a ceiling that collective success never encounters. Daddy Lumba could have focused exclusively on his own career, protecting his territory, and he might have had a few more hits, a bit more market share. But by investing in others, he created a movement larger than himself. The artists he mentored have continued his musical traditions, introduced his style to new audiences, and kept his influence alive in ways his music alone never could. When you go alone, your impact dies with you. When you bring others along, your impact becomes exponential and eternal. Lesson 6. Authenticity attracts imitation. Throughout Daddy Lumba's career, one element remained consistent even as his sound evolved: his unwavering commitment to Ghanaian identity and authenticity. While many African artists in the 1990s and 2000s were trying to sound American or British, copying Western R&B and hip-hop styles wholesale in hopes of international breakthrough, Daddy Lumba doubled down on his Ghanaianness. His lyrics were predominantly in one of Ghana's major local languages, even though singing in English might have opened more international doors. His storytelling drew deeply from Ghanaian proverbs, folklore, and everyday experiences that any Ghanaian could recognize immediately. He sang about real Ghanaian life, the struggles of young men trying to make it in the city, the pain of lovers separated by economic circumstances, the joy of traditional celebrations, the complexity of family dynamics in Ghanaian culture, the corruption in society, the spiritual dimensions of Ghanaian life. Songs like Teresa told specifically Ghanaian stories with Ghanaian rhythms, Ghanaian instruments, and Ghanaian sensibilities. When other artists were abandoning traditional instruments in favor of purely electronic production, Daddy Lumba continued incorporating these sounds, keeping them alive for new generations. This authenticity became his brand, his signature, his superpower. While artists who tried to sound American or British often came across as cheap imitation, Daddy Lumba was undeniably original. Nobody else sounded like him because his sound emerged from genuinely lived Ghanaian experience rather than copying external trends. This authenticity created passionate loyalty among his fan base. Ghanaians didn't just enjoy his music, they felt represented by it. It expressed their joys, their pains, their worldview in ways that imported music or imitative Ghanaian music never could. When he performed, audiences didn't just sing along, they connected emotionally because they recognized their own stories in his songs. That authentic connection created a career longevity that trendiness could never provide. Now, what can we learn from this? Authenticity creates irreplaceable value, while imitation creates interchangeable commodities. My good friend, we live in an era obsessed with benchmarking against successful models, copying what works elsewhere, and following proven formulas. But here's the paradox: the more you try to be like everyone else, the less valuable you become. When Daddy Lumba chose to sing in Twi about Ghanaian experiences rather than imitating American R&B in English, he wasn't limiting himself. He was claiming territory nobody else could occupy. Your authentic perspective, informed by your unique culture, experiences, and worldview, is the only thing you possess that cannot be commodified or replicated. When you abandon authenticity for imitation, you enter a competition you can never win because someone else will always do that thing more authentically than you can as an imitator. So if you're building a business or personal brand in a competitive field, maybe you're tempted to copy exactly what successful competitors in America or Europe are doing, mimicking their marketing styles, their product offerings, their messaging, instead of becoming a pale copy of someone else, the way most people do, sacrificing their uniqueness for familiar formulas. Rather, lean into what makes your perspective distinctive. What experiences have you had that others haven't? What cultural insights do you possess that others lack? What authentic perspective can you bring that no competitor can replicate? Build from that foundation, even if it seems less immediately marketable than copying proven models. And it would create a brand position that's defensible because it's irreplaceable. Attract customers who want your authentic perspective rather than a generic commodity, and build something that competitors can admire but never duplicate, because they can copy your methods but never your authentic identity. As Oscar Wilde brilliantly stated, be yourself, everyone else is already taken. What Wilde captured with wit and what Daddy Lumba demonstrated with his career is that imitation always produces a diluted version of someone else's value, while authenticity creates original value. When Ghanaian artists tried to sound American, they were competing against actual American artists who would always sound more American. But when Daddy Lumba sounded unapologetically Ghanaian, he created a category where he had no competition. Your authentic self is your only source of irreplaceable value. Protect it, develop it, and build from it. Lesson 7. Longevity requires discipline in success. One of the most remarkable aspects of Daddy Lumba's career is not just that he achieved success, but that he sustained it for over 35 years, a feat almost unheard of in African music, where most artists enjoy brief peaks before fading into obscurity. While many of his contemporaries from the 1980s and 1990s are now forgotten or struggling, Daddy Lumba remained relevant, productive, and respected well into the 2020s. This longevity didn't happen by accident. It resulted from disciplines he maintained even after achieving massive success. First, he never stopped working. While many successful artists become complacent, releasing albums sporadically or living off past glory, Daddy Lumba maintained a consistent output throughout his career. Between 1989 and 2024, he released over 30 studio albums, averaging nearly an album per year for 35 years. This productivity kept him present in the market, gave him multiple opportunities to create hits, and demonstrated to fans that he wasn't coasting on legacy, but continuing to contribute new art. Second, he managed his finances wisely. Unlike many African artists who spend their peak earnings on lavish lifestyles that leave them broke when the hits stop coming, Daddy Lumba invested in real estate, business ventures, and sustainable wealth building. By 2025, he owned properties and had diverse income streams beyond music, ensuring financial security regardless of album sales. Third, he maintained his health and voice. While many musicians from his generation lost their vocal abilities to excessive alcohol, drugs, or poor health habits, Daddy Lumba protected his instrument. At 60 years old in 2024, he could still perform with the vocal power and clarity he had at 30, a testament to decades of discipline. Fourth, he stayed scandal-free. While many celebrities caught controversy for attention, Daddy Lumba's maintained a relatively clean public image. He avoided the beefs, the public feuds, the tabloid scandals that derailed many careers. This respectability made him acceptable across generations. Grandparents approved of him, which meant that grandchildren could listen without family conflicts. Finally, he adapted his business model to changing industry realities, learning about digital distribution, streaming platforms, and new revenue models even in his 50s. Now, what can we learn from this? The disciplines that get you to success are different from the disciplines that keep you in success. And the second set is actually harder. My good friend, here's a truth. Most success advice ignores. Getting successful requires hunger, hustle, and relentless drive, but staying successful requires discipline, consistency, and delayed gratification, which are much harder to maintain once you've already achieved your goals. When Daddy Lumba was struggling in Germany washing dishes while pursuing music, the motivation was obvious: succeed or fail. But after selling millions of albums, winning every award, achieving legendary status, what motivates you to keep working consistently, keep learning, keep adapting, keep protecting what you've built? Most people lose their hunger once they achieve success, which is why most success is temporary. Sustained excellence requires replacing external pressure with internal discipline. So imagine you finally achieve the success you've been chasing. Maybe your business becomes profitable, or you get the promotion you worked years for, or your project goes viral and suddenly you're in demand. Instead of relaxing, coasting, spending freely, and letting discipline slip the way most people do once they make it, believing they've earned the right to slack off, rather recognize that this is when discipline becomes most critical. Maintain the productive habits that got you here, even though you no longer financially need to. Keep learning and adapting even though you could rest on your current knowledge. Invest your success rather than spending it. Protect your reputation through continued professionalism. Stay physically and mentally healthy so you can sustain performance, and it will transform temporary success into sustained excellence. Prevent the common trajectory of rise and fall that most people experience, and build a legacy of consistency that compounds over decades, because while many people can achieve success through intense short-term effort, only the disciplined can maintain it across a lifetime. As Aristotle wisely observed, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. What Aristotle understood 2,300 years ago, and what Daddy Lumba demonstrated in his career, is that sustainable excellence is never about one great performance or one perfect moment. It's about maintaining standards consistently over time, even when nobody's watching, even when you don't feel like it, even when you could get away with less. Daddy Lumba's longevity didn't come from one brilliant album or one incredible concert. It came from showing up consistently for 35 years with professionalism, productivity, and quality. That's not glamorous, but it's what separates legends from one-hit wonders. Lesson 8. Your art should serve your community, not just your ambition. Throughout his career, Daddy Lumba never forgot where he came from or who his music served. While many artists, upon achieving international recognition, distanced themselves from their local communities in pursuit of global markets, Daddy Lumba maintained deep roots in Ghanaian communities, particularly the Ashanti region where he was born. His music consistently addressed social issues affecting ordinary Ghanaians: unemployment, poverty, corruption, relationship challenges, family dynamics. He used his platform to speak on social issues, sometimes controversially. He performed regularly at funerals and community events, not just high-paying concerts, understanding that his presence brought comfort and joy to ordinary people who had supported him throughout his career. He contributed financially to community development projects in his hometown and other areas, building infrastructure and supporting education. In 2024, when he celebrated his 60th birthday, instead of throwing an extravagant personal party, he organized events that benefited communities, including free concerts for fans who couldn't afford expensive tickets and charitable donations to causes supporting vulnerable populations. This consistent community service made him more than an entertainer. He became a cultural anchor, a voice for the voiceless, someone whose success didn't remove him from his people, but connected him more deeply to them. What can we learn from this? Your gifts should serve the community that nurtured them, not just your personal advancement. My good friend, there's a dangerous temptation that comes with success: to view your talents purely as personal assets to be monetized for maximum individual gain. But Daddy Lumba understood something deeper. His musical gifts were nurtured by a community, shaped by Ghanaian culture, and therefore carried responsibilities beyond personal enrichment. Your talents, whatever they are, didn't emerge in a vacuum. They were developed in a cultural context, supported by communities, built on foundations others laid. When you use those talents purely for personal gain without giving back, you're extracting value without contributing, which ultimately depletes both you and your community. So imagine you've achieved significant success in your field. Maybe you're a doctor who grew up in a struggling neighborhood, or an entrepreneur whose community supported your early business, or a professional whose skills were developed through public education and community resources. Instead of using your success to distance yourself from that community, moving to exclusive areas where you never interact with those who helped shape you, the way many successful people do, rather maintain roots in your community through regular service. Offer pro bono work to those who can't afford your services, mentor young people from similar backgrounds, invest in community development projects. Use your platform to address issues affecting your community. Return regularly, not just for photo opportunities, but for genuine engagement, and it would ensure your success becomes a community asset rather than just a personal achievement. Create pathways for others to follow your journey and give your work deeper meaning beyond just financial success. Because ultimately, success without service feels hollow, while service-integrated success becomes legacy. As Martin Luther King Jr. powerfully stated, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? What Dr. King articulated and what Daddy Lumba exemplified is that a life measured purely by personal achievement, no matter how impressive, falls short of its potential. When Daddy Lumba sings at a funeral for little money because the family requested him, when he releases songs addressing social issues that don't maximize commercial appeal, when he invests in community projects that don't directly benefit him, he's answering King's question. Your gifts are not just for you, they're for the communities that shaped them. As we bring this video to a close, here's a recap of all the lessons from the life of Daddy Lumba. Lesson 1. You don't need perfect conditions to start building your dream. You need to maximize whatever is in your hand right now. Lesson 2. Collaboration can accelerate your growth, but never let partnership dependency prevent you from developing your individual strength. Lesson 3. Staying true to your core doesn't mean refusing to evolve. It means expressing your essence through whatever forms your current audience can receive. Lesson 4. Your personal struggles are not interruptions to your work. They are raw materials that, when properly processed, can deepen and authenticate your work. Lesson 5. True legacy is not measured by how high you climb alone, but by how many people you bring with you on the journey. Lesson 6. Authenticity creates irreplaceable value, while imitation creates interchangeable commodities. Lesson 7. The disciplines that get you to success are different from the disciplines that keep you in success, and the second set is actually harder. Lesson 8. Your gifts should serve the community that nurtured them, not just your personal advancement. So, until I see you again in the next video, which is already being prepared, remember that life gives us episodes of chaos and peace. But after each episode, pause and ask yourself, what can I learn from this?